this video, we're going to introduce the options that are available for auto-generating baseline test cases using transactions that have been captured with CA Continuous Application Insight. So the focus of this video is going to be, once you have your transactions selected, what options are available for making the baseline test cases, and what do these options mean? And then we'll take a look at what the test cases look like based on the different options that are selected. So first, let's go ahead and define what a baseline test case is. And let's take a look at Workstation and a test case we have open here, a baseline test case that is open, and talk about how this works and what the function is. So a baseline test case does what it says. It tests against a baseline. And what it does, it has a test step here that will invoke a system under test, get a response back, save the response to a property, and then compare an expected result that it has stored within the test case against the response. And as you can see here, if the control and test check that they're the same, and if it comes up false, then fail the test. So this is really useful for regression testing because you have expected results. You know how this function is supposed to work. You can test against it. And if suddenly it fails, that means a defect has been introduced during an update to the system. So CA Application Insight is capable of capturing transactions and then generating these baseline test cases using the transaction data to generate these expected results and also create the test steps that will invoke the system under test. So what we're going to do in this video is discuss the options that are there for creating these different types of test cases and take a look at them so you can make educated choices when you decide to make baseline test cases in your own environment. So let's do a quick tour of the environment that we're working in so it'll help make sense with some of the information that you see in CAI. So to begin with, what you're looking at here is we are using 3 virtual machines. There's some information about the 3 virtual machines that are being used to generate the environment to create these demonstration videos. And we have an app server, DT client, and DT server machines. And these are all Windows machines. And the app server machine is housing the 2 system under test applications. We have Lisa Bank, which is a mock banking system, and we have Forward Cars, which is a mock online automobile retailer website. And as we look at the home screen on the portal, we can see that these applications are running a total of 4 agents for cars and 1 agent for Lisa Bank. So as we look at data and transactions that are coming through with CAI later on, you'll see these different agents showing up in the lists. And then the other 2 machines here are the DT client. This represents the machine that a typical end user would use, where you would work through the portal and through DevTest Workstation, which would then be connected to DT server. And DT server has the full installation of the DevTest server environment. It's not distributed. All the components are in one, such as a coordinator and simulator servers are all on that one server. But the server is providing the functionality and the ability to run test cases and things like that for the DT client machine. So what this does is simulates on a very small scale what an enterprise installation might be like, where you have an application server, you have end users working on their client machines, and then you have a server environment for dev test that would be taking care of all the heavy performance and heavy lifting on the back end needed for dev test. So this is the environment that we're going to be working in as we demonstrate baseline test cases with CAI. Now, one very important nuance to note here for this video is that all the demonstrations where we're using DevTest Workstation is located on the DT client, but the projects that we're going to open and the files we're going to open are actually on DT server. So if we go over to Workstation and take a look here, you can see I have a project open. Workstation itself is open on DT client, like an end user's machine, but it's actually opening projects on the DT server machine because I happen to have access to be able to go in and open projects there and open test cases right from the server itself. Now, in a real-world environment, the DevTest portal creates the baseline test cases, and when it does that, it creates them in projects that the project location is designated by some configurations. And the location for these projects may not be accessible from an end user's machine. So While I'm quickly just opening a project and opening test cases, it may not be quite that simple just to make a baseline and then jump into Workstation and open it in a real-world environment, depending on how it's configured. And there are some nuances about how to go about pulling down test cases and editing them, and many different customers have their own ways of managing that process. But just want to make it clear that as you're watching this video, while I'm opening these projects and test cases very quickly, it may not be that simple in your own environment when you go to make baseline test cases.